And now the floor is for Jonathan Wilson, that is currently the Chief Audit Executive for Barclays Europe, and Wille Jans Megens, Head of the Audit for ENG Group.
Thank you very much, Paco, for that very kind introduction. You're very generous. What I'd like to do is just introduce the first two members of our panel for this session. The first one is Nora Gürtler, who is currently the Chief Audit Executive at Generali Group. And Nora was appointed into that position in 2017, having previously been, through the organisation, Chief Risk Officer in Germany and an executive member of the board in Germany before her appointment as Chief Auditor. She's also the Chair of the Insurance Committee of ECIIA. You're very welcome, Nora.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome. Good afternoon.
And the second member of our panel is Massimiliano Turconi, who is currently the Chief Audit Executive of the TIM Group. I think some of you may maybe recognise Italia Telecom, which was a sort of a previous guise of the organisation. Massimiliano has also been Chief Audit Executive of some really interesting companies, of Ferrero, which I think we'll all recognise, and also Heineken. So I'm not sure if anyone would not know both of those brands. But also Massimiliano is the Vice Chair of the ECIIA and a very valuable colleague across all of these topics. So you're very welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody.
Yeah, and then sitting next to me on the couch, on the sofa, Hendrik. Hendrik, you are Director, ESG Specialist, Principal ESG Specialist at Workiva. Big thank you also for joining us here physically in Brussels. And maybe let me start with my first question to you, Hendrik. So we heard this morning that ESG regulation is evolving. So what is specific to the banking sector, to Europe, and to internal audit?
Yeah, so if we just look at, in general, the ESG or sustainability related regulations that have come out, that are being changed, because I think what you touched upon there is they are evolving, right? So if we look at something like SFDR, they've just gone out and said, let's have another consultation on it so we can get a bit more input to see that it actually is working. So, and then obviously CSRD, no one can sort of get away from that. There's none of the standards or the sector standards that have been pushed a bit now. But what it's mean for the financial sector is obviously this. When they started with something like the EU taxonomy, when that came out, they were quite successful. They were smartly thinking when they said, let's let the corporate sector report first, because they are sort of impacting sort of firsthand what it is. When you then have the financial sector, which obviously then say, okay, we are funding, hence we become secondary sort of impact on that. So I think the financial services sector and the interrelation between the corporate sector and the financial services sector there is very interesting and very important. But from the financial services sector, what we can see is specifically internal audit, and I know that I'm not going to steal too much from Massimo when we have, I know he's probably going to get onto that as well, but what I see with these regulations, we have all, if you work in the banking sector, you have implemented regulations historically, with Basel II when that came out, Basel III, all of these sort of things. These are similar sort of frameworks, just a different type of topics. It's your same exposure, it's just a different way of looking at it. You operate in the area of risk and reward, hence this is a risk, climate-related risk is what you have to then assess and be able to disclose on. The disclosure side of it, I would say, becomes a bit, I'm not going to call it secondary, because obviously reporting is very important, and come from a firm that sort of, we have a platform that helps with that. So obviously that's our prime sort of objective, to help firms become more transparent. And that's exactly where it's trying to get to, right? It's a transparency so that financial services sector individuals and people analyzing it, assessing it, can actually make sound investment decision, or even on the retail or personal investment side. But finally, what I was just last bit there is what the internal audit sector can be really helpful with. And I've seen it happens when it implemented sort of other style of regulations or any sort of large transformational programs within risk regulation, is to be on the ground from the beginning of these programs, to act as that sort of extra layer of, sort of, not security is not the right word, but a scrutiny to make sure that what is being done from interpretation is accurate, assessment of what needs to happen, implementation, so that when you actually get to your first round of disclosures, that first sort of review session you might have on it is probably going to be easier for both people involved, both the internal audit department, but also from the people that actually are doing it. And I think, so that's, if we can get to that point where that it's a smoother transition, I think it's going to benefit sort of quite a lot of us. But yeah, it's a massively changing environment. We know that. It's evolving a lot, and it's just making sure you have a plan, you know where you should go to. And then it's, as I said, the disclosure is there. So I think it's Paul Wilkinson from CDP always say, the disclosure is the X-ray, but you can't do a surgery without the X-ray. And that's effectively what I'm trying to get to, right? What can we actually do with these pieces of information that the companies are putting out to the market to be able to make sound investment decisions, but also making sure that where you actually put your money is safe enough that they will be able to repay you. Because I think that's sort of the climate angle to it.
Clear? Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe turning to Massimiliano, anything you would like to add to this?
Yes. Yes. Of course, I represent the industrial commercial companies and not the banking sector. And I see, consider the corporate sustainability reporting directive that is basically increasing the number of companies that need to be compliant with. I see for the industrial commercial companies, especially for the production companies, an important step forward that they need to make as because honestly, this is very impactful if you look all the supply chain, if you look a lot of part that is related to the human rights. We have also the corporate sustainability due diligence directive will come is not finalized yet, but also this will impact a lot the environmental and human rights risk, and is applicable particularly, I would say, for industrial companies that are spread over the world. We have maybe production plants in a difficult area of the globe, and or using suppliers in a different or particular part of the world. That's so I see, and I always said that internal audit. I mean, the names we are listening here and discuss in this panel, we are not representing internal audit departments. I mean, we don't represent let's say the majority of the companies. Let's rephrase it. For us, I was working. You mentioned the company we're working with. Even the last one is mature company, large structure with a certain governance, and the audit department should be very mature in these kind of companies, but we don't represent the people outside there. We don't represent the audit department that need to deal with even a different type of maturity in their organization, even different type of, let's say, perception on the risk related to ESG. So it's not easy for them if they need to start from scratch in these companies to discuss with even not the board, maybe they even report to CFOs, they report to CEOs, to other level in the organization. They need to convince them that are relevant, not only because they need to be compliant with the regulation that is coming, but also because there are additional type of risks related to the. So what I say that it will impact a lot our profession, especially for the medium size, or not very small because it's not applicable to everybody, but a medium-sized company where are not ready yet with this kind of topics. So I see a big change, and we need to support as a profession particularly these people, not the big ones, where they're already maybe structured.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Massimiliano. I think very fair comment about medium and small-sized companies. We talked about reporting, right? And you mentioned, I wrote it down actually, the surgery without the X-ray. And we talked about reporting and ESG reporting. So maybe a good time to ask a question to the audience. And maybe I ask everybody to turn to Slido. There will be a question popping up. And that poll is, who in your company is responsible for or in charge of ESG reporting? So that question pops up in Slido. We probably have to wait a few moments before the results come out. But in the meantime, Jonathan, can I ask you at Barclays?
Yes.
Who is in charge of ESG reporting?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a difficult question, you know, and not just the reporting, just in terms of their primary responsibility for ESG across the organisation. I think if you go back historically, it was very much seen as a reporting issue. It was very much around risk. It was very much around the CFO. Yep. But actually, if you look at where do you get the most impact is actually in the first line. Yeah. And you know, Philip Maltby said earlier on today how important that was actually to see that level of ownership in the first line. And even what you said, Henrik, you know, we're not dismissing the CFO and we're not dismissing the Q functions or risk at all. But you know, those who will really make the difference are those who are selling products, those who are actually developing products. And that's not just a practical thing to put things in front of people. There is a behavioural mindset to that as well. You know, that if we really want to make the difference here, if we really want to, you know, we said save the planet, that's what we've said. You know, that's where that has to come from. I'm not certainly downplaying the board responsibility. Of course, the board have got primary responsibility for this in addition to many other things. You know, so it is a really complicated question. You know, so and I think it has evolved as the environment has evolved around this more generally. So like, thank you very much for all of you on answering the question on Slido. I know some of the answers are still coming in. I have a really interesting word map in front of me here with was representing your answers. In big and bold, we've got the board of directors, you know, and I think that is very fair. And I think that, you know, the CEO is attached there as well, and very much that tone from the top, let's call it that, it's vitally important in this, isn't it? You know, it's without that, you know, you really lose the opportunity to get that level of focus that you need. We've got sustainability actually, and we do have, you know, in my organisation, we do have a dedicated sustainability function, you know, and others, and Massimiliano has mentioned some of the smaller organisations maybe don't have the luxury of being able to do that, but I think that is important. We've got the ESG team, we've got finance, the CFO, we've got the deputy CEO has got obviously primary responsibility in organisations. So a sort of a broad responsibility. So maybe if I go to maybe if I come to Nora now and I ask you that question, Nora, you know, who in Generali has got that organisational responsibility for ESG? How does that go down?
Well, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I would say you've already said everything. So what should I add? But okay, of course, I try to answer in a more structured way. So maybe I first quote. So I prepared myself for all kinds of ESG questions. Maybe I first quote our chairman Andrea Sironi, and with this quote, he already says everything. So he said, for Generali, integrating sustainability in every field of the business is a priority. Compliance with sustainable finance regulation is an essential part of the culture of the entire organization and a competitive advantage of Generali's value proposition to all our stakeholders. The board and I are fully committed to ensuring that an effective compliance culture thrives and operates at all levels of the business, supporting the full implementation of sustainable finance regulations and maintaining the highest level of integrity and reputation. So this is the easy part. I think with this, our chairman, who is a highly appreciated person, not only in Italy, in Europe, a professor of Bocconi, I think he has said everything. Now, to be a bit more specific, of course, the board, the CEO, our chairman, cannot work for 81,000 employees that we have. So Generali is a huge organization. We are a global organization, and Italian independent international insurance group. And to be a bit more specific, we've been working to integrate sustainability into our operations since 2015, which at the time was quite an early point in time. And since then, we've integrated it continuously, one step after the other, into our strategic plan. So Generali has a 3-year strategic plan traditionally, since always. And now it has become sustainability. ESG topics have become a core element of our current strategic plan and will remain there. To structure it a bit more, we consider ourselves as in the following dimensions: as a responsible investor, as a responsible insurer, as a responsible employer, and last but not least, as a responsible citizen. So sustainability is embedded thoroughly in our organization based on a framework that lays upon solid foundations, such as a sound governance, clear internal regulations, incentive systems, and transparent monitoring and reporting. So to quote the main elements of to list the main elements of this implementation, we have renewed our group sustainability policy. It has just been approved by the board of directors now in 2023, and the related guidelines. I quote just one, the responsible underwriting group guideline. In terms of committees, we start, it's a tone from the top. So we start with a committee of the board of directors, the Innovation and Sustainability Committee, which sets the overall strategy. So in Italy, since we have different governance systems in Europe and around the world, in Italy, we have the board of directors, which is responsible for everything. And then the delegation of powers descend in the organization. Usually Italy has a CEO who has a delegation from the board to run the operational business. In Italy, it's called amministratore delegato. So the member of the board of directors has a delegation to run the business. And from there, all the delegations of powers descend. With some exceptions, the control functions, for example, receive their delegations of powers directly from the board of directors, at least in Generali Group, and report to the board of directors. So they are independent business partners and also have their say on sustainability, on ESG topics. So we start with a committee of the board. Then our group management committee is involved, of course, in all strategic decisions also and also on ESG topics. Then we have a dedicated function, the Group Chief Sustainability Officer function, which is a standalone function in its own right, and which just about a year ago, with the last reorganization, got an upgrade in the hierarchy. Now our Group Chief Sustainability Officer is reporting directly to the General Manager of Generali Group. In terms of operationalization, we have in head office, so head office guides the whole Generali Group, directs the whole Generali Group. We have a task force on ESG, which connects all relevant functions. Now you see what I'm heading at. I'm heading at a matrix organization between ESG for insurers, at least insurance groups, is so universal and touches all elements of the organization, impacts all the elements of the organization that we cannot just do with one function. So this task force in head office connects the dots in the relevant business function, investments, asset management, insurance business functions. Of course, the finance area, the CFO area, the control functions, risk compliance participate. Then, of course, communication, public affairs, investor relations, HR, and the Human Safety Net Foundation, which is our corporate social responsibility initiative. Now connecting our local companies, there is a sustainability community at local level, and the colleagues at local level act as the focal points for our Group Chief Sustainability Officer. So we have local sustainability managers, which usually report to the local CFO and in many, many cases are part of the local executive committees. So what is important if you want to embed a governance is to embed it at a suitable level in the hierarchy. This is my attempt to describe the matrix structure. So, of course, all the business functions at a head office level, they also involve their local counterparts, and which then converge at local point towards the focal points that I just mentioned. Where is audit located in all this? We have some very special situation in Italy. So the Italian regulator IVAS cares a lot about independence. So we mostly do assurance work. Of course, we also have some advisory work to do, of course. But when we do advisory engagements, we are also obliged to raise issues. So there are no advisory engagements just like this. We always raise issues. And so we are connected with all these initiatives, but for us, independence is a very important factor. So we're very keen on keeping our independence, although, of course, being involved in all these discussions at various levels. I close with monitoring and reporting. So if you set up a governance system, of course, you need monitoring, reporting of suitable KPIs and also qualitative information. This is also not only, but also reflected in our group annual integrated report, which contains, in our case, both financial KPIs and ESG information, non-financial KPIs, non-financial information. So everything is in one report. Currently, the external auditor still does of the non-financial part, not of the financial, which is, of course, subject to the fully fledged external audit since ever. Currently, our auditor does some light review, but starting from 2024 and in the future, also the non-financial information part will be subject to the fully fledged external audit. Any governance system with an impact also needs to be included in remuneration and incentive schemes. This is also the case for us. So some ESG KPIs are integrated at all levels in the short-term incentive scheme, in the long-term incentive scheme, in our share plan. So we have a share plan for employees where they can purchase Generali shares at favorable conditions, which is called We Share, our share program. Also here, ESG KPIs, concretely the decarbonization of the group's operating activities, are part of that. And last but not least, also publicly, you probably know that Generali is a member of the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance and the Net Zero Insurance Alliance. So I hope that this has given you this overview has given you some insight on how we see that, how we see ESG in Generali, which means very comprehensive. And maybe last comment, as an insurance group, we concretely see the effects of climate change on our insurance operations in terms of natural catastrophes, for example, but not only.
Thank you for that, Nora. I mean, it just shows you how ESG touches really every aspect of the organization, and I think you were able to show us there how that was reflected in Generali. Maybe just Massimiliano, if you want to pick that up from a TIM group perspective in terms of that organizational responsibility, how it touches the organization.
Yes, I want to complement it. I would say that it's quite similar to Generali in the sense that I want to start with the role of the internal audit, if it is not the president's question, but just a second, because the actual governance is the result of the audit activity done 3 years ago, meaning because thank God we started from that level into performance. So we have the ESG governance strategy audit done. Based on that, basically, we have, of course, the board. We discussed it before. The board, of course, is the primary responsible, and that's not to discuss this. We have part of this the board. We have the sustainability committee, like the other committees that are part of the board with specific competencies. And this is leading basically the strategy, reviewing the reporting, reviewing the projects, and we will discuss also later in the discussion today who is actually working on it. So the operational staff. We have a sustainability department, very structured, linked to the CEO. With this is let's say team that is basically taking care of the reporting part at the moment. In the past was more on the finance, the reporting side, and also the projects part. because there are two different aspects in DSG. So at the moment they are working on the reporting part, collecting information, data, implementing also tool to simplify the data collection, and also making the link between the sustainability or ESG agenda to the strategy, making sure that the ESG agenda is not something separate, but it's part of the strategy. So is strongly pushing the functions and the departments to increase in their strategy for the different department, the ESG part is embedded fully in their strategy. So in a few words, if the, let's say, operational director or IT director is sitting down with the CEO discussing the strategic plan for the following year, he discuss directly even the ESG part. It's not only the ESG team discussing it. They are part of even the budget, even the plans, so all discussion. Then what is the link between the sustainability team and the functions? Basically, I have a person or a few persons inside of each department, and I'm talking about the first line, that are called governance, and are reporting to the director of each department. And they are taking care of different aspects regarding internal controls, risk assessment, and even DSG topics. So is the focal point inside of each department that are dealing directly with the sustainability team in collecting data, discuss everything that is related with their different departments. That's overall the overall governance. We still have two reports. It's not yet common. This is why at the moment is the sustainability department taking care of the reporting, OSG reporting, and the finance issuing the annual report at the moment. And as audit, we will discuss maybe later on the role of the audit. But of course, also in this case, the ESG agenda is part of a long-term incentive plan, a short-term incentive plan. All of us, we have a specific part of our MBO linked to the ESG agenda.
Thank you for that. I mean, maybe just to extend that point a little bit more, Massimiliano, and to stay with you. There's obviously very deliberate reporting requirements, and even in the annual report, we heard about Pillar 3 earlier, where we've got certain disclosures to make, and where you don't necessarily have an external audit presence or opinion, but in some cases you do. And I just wonder, how do you see that balance between internal audit and external audit? How do you approach that in your organisation? Very interesting to hear that.
Yeah. Yes, I my personal and professional point of view, I think that I strongly don't touch anything that is the reporting. Let me rephrase it. So we have done several audits on the reporting, and is the governance of the reporting. So data governance collection. So we also, last one we did a year ago, I think, where we try to highlight weaknesses or efficiencies regarding the data gathering, the information you need to collect, the links between, so basically the role, responsibilities, everything is related to this on the reporting side. We have an external auditor that are doing certain activity. At least we have a limited assurance. In the past, in the future will be probably reasonable assurance. I think they're paid for that. They're good to do their stuff. If we are able to select the right one, meaning you have a tender, if you're able to select the good ones, then they're able to do the activity. They are paid for that. I don't think, so we have much more to do inside the organization than doing an audit on the reporting side, a part of governance and for the first time the data collection to understand if the flow is correct. So my point of view as a profession, I always said I don't want to audit any single number in the report. It's not my role. But because we have a lot of time to invest in the report in all the projects related to this. So I'm focusing my audit activities on what are the projects inside the organization, what are the targets in 2, 3, or 5, 10 years time, whatever it is. We are auditing every year. We select few projects. We have 40 projects in TIM related to the ESG agenda with a specific governance, each of the project with a specific team dedicated, steering committees, whatever. We audit. We select a few projects every year, and we audit the project related to the ESG, making sure that what is communicated at the outside world you see in this ESG reporting, we will be able to achieve in the right way, with the right reaching the targets. So this is, I see that the value we provide to the organization, not on the checking what is official reporting, but basically how we make sure that our agenda is structurally managed and is not greenwashing or whatever. There is something concrete that we run every single day with the dedicated budget. If it's not enough, we raise the hand because probably we see the risk that are not able to reach the target in the right time, and they need to be disclosed. This is what my professional point of view, that we have much more to do on this stuff that's just done the activity on the reporting. But this is what I do. I have done it in my previous companies. I continue to force to do in this one.
Thank you very much, Massimiliano. And maybe what I would like is to turn to Nora. Maybe Nora, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on how you have embedded ESG as part of your internal activities?
All right.
Yeah.
To explain that, maybe I should start with a few words on what is our global audit function. So we have a so-called solid function in Generali, solid with a managerial solid line, a managerial hierarchy. Of course, when it comes to formal approvals, everything is approved by the boards at local level. So this is crystal clear. But we are one function with more than 400 auditors working according to a common methodology on common IT systems, according to a common governance framework. So having said that, we have embedded ESG topics in our audit activities around 2020. It has been somewhere during the pandemics where we started, okay, this is a forthcoming topic, we need to integrate that. And I think we've done it in a comprehensive and structured way, meaning the following. Of course, the role of our audit is to accompany Generali's growth in a positive way. So to accompany profitable growth and, of course, to avoid any kind of negative surprises. So as auditors, I'm pretty convinced we're always judged by what we have not spotted and less by what we have spotted and what we have managed to get fixed. And so we have based our ESG audit strategy on the company strategy, which at the time, I say at the time because now with upcoming regulation, it's changing. At the time, Generali had identified 18 ESG megatrends. So for example, climate change, pandemics and extreme events, biodiversity degradation, and so on, in a dedicated ESG strategy process. So this is our basis. And having said that, the basis is now changing as for everyone because EU regulation is forthcoming. At the time in 2020, there was comparatively little external regulation and external guidance, so that everyone, both the company and the internal audit function, had to define the basis by ourselves. And of course, we adapt continuously. What we have done at the time is to include ESG audit on ESG topics in our group-wide methodology. So auditing ESG topics in a certain way, and I'll come to that in a second, is an obligation for every auditor according to our agreed governance or group governance. So the governance is expressed in terms of the audit policy and then subsequent methodology documents. We have integrated ESG topics, I would say, in a macro and a micro view. I try to structure it a little bit like this. What do I intend with macro view? So macro view first. The way we operate is that we have a series every year of so-called thematic audits. Now, maybe I need to start with the audit plan. So we have a yearly audit plan, which can be updated in case of need on a quarterly basis. But I'm not in favor of changing the audit plan every quarter and have it rolling. So we have a yearly audit plan. So we have a clear notion of delivery, a clear measurability of what we have promised to deliver, and by the end of the year, what we have delivered, with the possibility to adapt. And this audit plan contains a series of so-called thematic audits, which are our flagships, which give assurance across a series of companies in our group and give transversal assurance to our board. So these are the most important products, I would like to say, because for us, it's difficult to explain to the board all let's say, all the diversity and the complexity of the underlying worldwide audit operations. So what we do is basically to explain the thematic audits. And so we have embedded ESG in a way that some of the thematic audits are so-called ESG flagship audits and explicitly address ESG topics. So, for example, not astonishingly, something like ESG factors in the investment process, which we audited for the first time in 2017, which at the time was quite early. ESG reporting and non-financial disclosure. So we did not, with this, we do not replicate what the external auditor is doing. So I share Massimiliano's view that internal audit should not replicate what the external auditor is doing. I do not have the organization. So I make a very short parenthesis. I do not have the organization to give assurance on the balance sheet and on the P&L. And I think I should not need to do so. So in insurance, the money in the end, everything we do is paid by the clients. So we do not print money. So if we permit ourselves to do double work, we make the client pay twice for the same service. Having said that, also the finance area is such a vast field, such a vast area that there is room for both of us. We do not replicate what the external auditor is doing, but I personally love transversal checks. Sometimes, of course, we audit governance and processes, but keeping a close eye on what is already covered. And so in the future, the ESG reporting on regarding the non-financial area will be covered by the external auditor, and then we will redefine our audit programs with reference to this. And another thematic audit, for example, is ESG factors in insurance product. Also not very surprising, given that we're a big insurance group, big international insurance group. So the targets of our audit approach is checking compliance, of course, with external and internal regulation, preventing reputation risk, and helping to make Generali fit for the new generations of customers who request an ESG focus. I close more or less with the micro view. So on top of these flagship thematic audits, we have integrated ESG topics in our audit methodology, let's say everywhere, following a comply or explain approach. So meaning that for each and every audit that an auditor worldwide is doing in the Generali Group, they have to check in the audit planning phase at the beginning of every audit engagement whether and which ESG topics are applicable. There can be a case where these ESG topics are not applicable, but then they have to explain. So that's comply or explain. And if applicable, they include it in the risk and control matrix that we have included in the testing activities that we do and so on. And then, of course, also in the audit reports, which have a specific subsection on ESG topics. So to close the loop, we always close the loop with the reporting to the board of directors, also there in the planning document, and then in the annual report that goes to the board. We have a dedicated page on ESG topics, basically on the flagship thematic audits. The rest is difficult to capture. So to be honest, we still struggle a little bit on how we can represent and capture all the rest of so the dispersed local audits. I would call it a bit white noise. So everything that that my organization is doing. So we are still working on that. And then, of course, we keep a close eye, as already mentioned, on the relationship and interface with the external auditor.
Thank you very much.
So basically, that's it.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you very much. I had one follow-up question for you, actually. When you talk about your flagship audits, those thematic audits that you do across companies, do you also report the results back to the companies themselves or only to the group of Generali?
No, of course. So, of course. Yeah. To be clear on, so this is a governance point on which we need to be very clear. So a thematic audit is in the end a conglomerate of local audits on the same topic following the same approach. So there needs to be the same approach, otherwise we cannot consolidate. And of course, all the local audit engagements are part of the local audit plans and are reported as such to the local boards. And then the consolidated view is reported to the group board, which is basically a summary of all the local audit results with let's say, the most common trends that we've identified. So what are the most, the question we need to answer is what are the most important topics that we have identified? So what is going well, what needs improvements across the group?
Thank you very much.
But to be very clear on governance, everything is approved by the local boards, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nora. Maybe turn it to you, Hendrik, because communication is key, both internally as well as externally. So what are your recommendations to internal audit, and what do you expect of the role of internal audit in regards to communication?
Yeah, communication is actually one of my favorite topics when it comes to this, because I think sometimes it gets a bit, I'm not going to say overlooked, because if you have a very strong investor relations department and communication and PR department, I think you probably should have this sort of the understanding of it. But what we have to understand with these new regulatory requirements being put on firms, what has historically been voluntary frameworks that you reported under, that you put out in your reports, and you make statements of, so from the board level saying, or the CEO level, we are very sustainable, we're going to be the most sustainable. Any of those topics that have historically been publicized are now being, other people can now measure that with the metrics coming through from these reporting requirements under these regulations. Which means that if you are not aligned between your different levels, from board, CEO, senior management, or about anyone who goes out publicly to speak about anything that you do in this topic, you can be caught out and all of a sudden be, so either mean the investor saying, well, you're not meeting the targets that you have publicly said you want to meet, which is obviously going to be a very, very strong sort of view from the investment society where they say, well, you are not doing what you're doing, so we are not going to invest in you because our investment strategy is to be sustainable and you are not meeting that. So that from an external perspective, so it makes sure that it's, so I'm not sure exactly how the internal audit is going to, if they're going to build, it's not about building a framework there, but make sure that, so there's clear guidance, clear communication steps, approval steps, etc., so that everyone actually works after the same information, from the same information throughout the year. Because I think Massimiliano touched upon it as well, Nora touched a bit on it as well when they talked about it. Yes, there's year-end reporting that needs to be done with your annual report. That's under the CSRD, but this is not just a one time a year reporting. You're setting targets. You need to be able to show that you actually are following that throughout the year, which means your external communication becomes so important from earnings calls and all of this, when analysts are going to look at your results to see, are you actually meeting these things? So just make sure from an internal audit perspective, I would definitely make sure that you have a seat at the table, or make sure that there's an ability to be part of setting up whichever communication framework or sort of approval process, etc., so that you can actually make sure that everyone is saying the same thing. Internally, I would say it's equally there as well, because we've already discussed it, already showed from the previous Slido poll question, there's so many different areas involved, and I think every area that came up was actually is an accurate response, because everyone will be involved. We're talking about first line, we're talking about the risk department, if you look at the financial services sector, right? Product development, we're talking about committees, the underwriting, everything needs to now have a lens of sustainability part of it to make sure that that is considered in your sort of operations, to make sure that you as a financial service institution actually can continue to earn your money, and also so your customers do not default on their loans, whatever it is, to you. And these climate-related items then is now stepping in together and become equally as the credit risk side of it, or part of the credit risk and market risk. So I think from the internal perspective, it's very important that there's a clear communication from the top as well of saying what you can and cannot say, because I think it's going to be very, very difficult in the first, I always say the first 3 years is going to be a PR exercise, but that's just my view on it, because it's so important to get your message out and that is accurate, you back it up. So if you then don't have a so precise structure or precise what you're allowed and you're not allowed to do, from an internal perspective, what you're not allowed to communicate, that's going to can be so dangerous when it comes to conferences or whatever that is. So I think you just make sure that structures internally, approvals internally is as sound and it's as documented, and policies and procedures are as clear and concise as they can be. That's probably where I would see the internal audit can lend their hand to make sure that works.
It's around the governance.
Yeah, it becomes a governance piece for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Henrik. You mentioned internal audit and considering ESG and market risk and credit risk. I think we could probably spend the next 4 or 5 hours talking about that one if we really wanted to, but we're not going to. I'm going to maybe change the emphasis a little bit now. I think a number of our speakers have very helpfully mentioned supply chain today, and it's obviously a very key area for consideration when we think about ESG. We think about not just from a banking perspective when we do get into sort of food safety, and we think about maybe some of the responsibilities we have around equity and supply chains. It's something which is really prevalent, and I wonder, within that, the collection of data is something which I think challenges all of us when it comes to this topic. And I wonder, Massimiliano, if I can ask you, given your background in terms of Ferrero and Heineken previously, just around some of those supply chain challenges, maybe what internal audit might be interested in supply chain, but also the wider piece there just around data and how important data is in this regard.
Yes, thank you. Yes, if I may comment a bit, what we discussed a second ago is really regarding the communication. If I may, what is important is important to understand the situation, the maturity of the company, maturity of the audit department. I would say that because audit can play also in the case that you're asking now, the question you're asking now, if can play an advisory role or an assurance role, really depends on the maturity of the situation. That's also valid for the question, meaning, of course, the supply chain, if you look also the corporate sustainability due diligence directive will touch really heavily this part, especially in the industrial companies. In my experience, we have different situations. Of course, if you are in a situation, I start with the advisory role. If there are no yet strongly defined assessment target, because if you look at the supply chain, we have many risks related to for instance, the human rights risk is one of the risks regarding to the supply chain is regarding how do you manage your supplier, what are based, are they ethical, they comply with the human rights policy if you have internally or legislation. And then it really, of course, make this become more risky if you work in an international company with maybe a production site in a certain part of the world where the risk related to, for instance, human rights much more wider. Why I say that? Because my experience in the past, especially in the food and beverage industries, of course, the raw material come from plantations, from different type of let's say plantation in Africa and Malaysia, in these places where there are farmers and they are working to let's say maybe not directly in contact with the company, but of course there are intermediaries or a cooperative, or I would say we call it local companies that are dealing directly with the farmer and then interacting with us. And one of the activity we let's say we consider very relevant in this case, how you make sure that until the last person in the chain, so the farmer working in the plantation are comply with first the local legislation, and secondly with the policy, the ethical policy, the human rights policy you have developed inside the organization. And go to the data. You need to first, what we have done in the past is an assurance role. We were supporting management, the first line, and more than the second one, to assess the let's say what are the risks. I mean, what are the supplier in the risky area? What are the activity that maybe are under a certain type of risk related to the ESG agenda? And then together with this, understand what is the communication flow we need to establish, what are the data we need to collect, and start a sort of flow to monitor, for instance, these kind of risks. And of course, in certain cases, we cannot do that internally, not only because we don't have the resources, also because there are reasons, because should be a totally a third party performing certain activities. I mentioned certain certification need to be done by external parties like Bureau Veritas, Bureau Van Dijk, that are specialized in certain ethical audits. And let's say, what we're trying to do, I think there are not many doing it, at least when I do a call with some colleagues, we're trying to to put all the data collection under the same umbrella, meaning if you're not able to do internal assurance, meaning done by internal audit in this case, we at least try to coordinate the activities. If there are many players performing assurance activities and ethical activities, we should coordinate this. So meaning we have direct contact with all the external players, and then because we need to set strategy, because also look at a practical example, who decide what are the supplier, we need to visit a specific here in terms of say, if you leave it to the first line, I don't think he's the best. I think he's not independent. It needs to be someone not guiding them for different reasons, but having an independent party that understand the methodology and in supporting them in defining basically the planning of the year. They need to go over, the suppliers need to visit, the activity they need to do. So what I say, in terms of supply chain, I think what is important that the audit is part of the discussion if he's not able to coordinate because maybe he's not mature yet. And there should be at least one department collecting all the data and sort coordinating this. At least should be this in this case. I think they are very independent. Otherwise, I don't rely a lot. I have done audit on the first line dealing with the Bureau Veritas and the others one just to mention, and challenging them the activities, the scope, the planning, because maybe they have a different agenda. So this is why. So for me, I think it's important this part. On that's it.
Thank you, Massimiliano, for that.
Shall I take over? Yeah, because I guess not only in the telecom sector you have a value chain to manage, but also in the insurance sector. Nora, can you explain the approach that you have to basically to how you get comfort on the entire value chain in the insurance sector?
Yes, sure. As I mentioned at the beginning, we could structure this as we Generali considers itself as a responsible investor, insurer, employer, and citizen. And so what has the group proposed to itself? So regarding the responsible investor insurer, which is which are the two most comprehensive aspects in terms of value chain, the related decisions impact invested companies and clients, making the insurance sector, of course, one of the best positioned to support and enable the sustainability transformation. So what does that mean for us as a responsible investor? We have integrated ESG criteria and are integrating them in our investment strategy for insurance proprietary investments with a full integration by 2024. So what is, of course, always important is to translate all the good intentions into concrete targets. Otherwise, you risk that they remain good intentions. Then still as a responsible investor, we have a net zero commitment, so to decarbonize insurance proprietary investments and become a carbon neutral company by 2050 with an interim goal minus 25% carbon footprint reduction by 2024. To increase the green and sustainable investments within a certain time frame by a certain amount. Then, as a responsible insurer, to increase insurance solutions with ESG components with a certain growth rate in 2021 to 2025, to proceed with the insurance portfolio decarbonization, to an important point, to make our distribution networks sustainability ready. So not to forget that for insurance companies, distribution is a very important aspect in your business model. In part depends on the distribution channels to have. Generali relies a lot on agents, not only, but a lot. So one of our main targets here is also to make our distribution networks sustainability ready. And then we have an initiative which I personally like a lot, which is called SME Enterprise. It is a prize which we award to sustainable SMEs, so small and medium enterprises, in order to foster their sustainable transition. So this is an initiative on a smaller scale, but I think it's an important flagship also to demonstrate that we care. As a responsible employer, of course, we have a people strategy addressing culture, diversity, competence upskilling, new ways of working. We have also as an employer a net zero commitment and a change management program on sustainability. And last but not least, as a responsible citizen, we have our human safety net, our corporate social responsibility initiative, which also incorporates ESG aspects on an increasing scale.
Thanks, Nora. Look, what I do want to do is give people, the audience, some time to ask some questions themselves. So maybe just one very final question for the panelists, and I suspect there might be a slightly short answer to these ones. It's very personal to your own organisation. So I just wonder, and maybe starting with you, Henrik, what initiatives have you taken actually to reduce your own environmental footprint, and in your area and your team, is there anything you can share with us that we can all learn from?
Yeah, so the company I work for is actually, we are AAA rated, sustainability rating under the MSCI. So there's quite a lot that the company has done through sort of the travels, offices even. Now after the pandemic, there was not that many people that went back to, so we have full flexibility of where we work, as long as it's obviously with the tax implications and stuff like that. But then so reducing the footprint through empty offices was a very clear step that was taken, especially in the US, where we have our largest operation. So that is probably one very concrete thing that I know we did that had an impact. My personal one is not to drive a combustion engine car.
Yes, we had Andrea mentioning that right at the very start of the day. I know about the German cars and keeping up with that race. Maybe Nora, to you, anything practical you can share with us that we can all benefit from?
So it has all been said basically. So we cut our travel activity by half since 2019, which was also driven by the pandemic. Probably which is the case for most people. But thanks to all these video tools, we can do all the transactional activities via video. We no longer travel for that. Although that I have to say, when you have delicate conversations, really confidential things, it's still better in person. But we try to tailor that in a very conscious way. So personally, I walk to the office and I walk back.
There's lots of benefits in that, Nora, definitely. And Massimiliano, just coming to you finally, anything practical you can share with us?
Yes, apart of course. First, we already said the remote working and the remote testing that everybody experienced after the COVID. But I would say much more important than this, honestly, is the data analytics, process mining tool, artificial intelligence. That's it. We do much more activities in the system automatically with data, without, especially with the companies moving to that direction, to cloud, with less paper, or paperless. With activity done remotely, then you reduce as much as possible the basically travels first. Second, the paper document you use. I force my team to don't have any paper documents. That I have only soft copies uploaded in our system, of course, audit management system tools, whatever it is, and use as much as possible data analytics, because also in this case, we have analysis of total population, and you focus on specific samples, reducing even the number of samples that you need to really test. Because if you look at 1,000 of data and you selected 3 anomalies, instead of having 50 or 60 pages of document to collect from the people. So honestly, for me, the future introduces not only the remote working, and a part of multinational is really forcing this data audit using much more the data. That's it. That's my view.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, a really ripe area, I think, for all of us to consider. Sort of that data analytics piece, the use of AI presents a real opportunity for all of us. Look, this is the chance. I think I give everyone a bit of a prompt already for your questions that you might want the panel to answer. So if you do have questions, if you want to, you've got the Slido there. If you send them through in Slido, we'll certainly put them to the panel. The first one.
Yeah. So the first question that comes up is, what are the biggest challenges for internal audit regarding their role in sustainability, based on your experience? And maybe, Hendrik, if I may start with you.
Yeah, I think as a not internal audit practitioner, but from what I've seen, what we talk about with our customers, it's the topical knowledge on sustainability, although sustainability as a topic has been around for a very long time. That's, we heard from Nora, for instance, they've had it for a long time, but the maturity in companies is very, very different depending on, and it's being caught up now with the regulations coming out, and then the detail level of reporting have to be done. So I think what we've seen a lot of people struggle with is the actual content knowledge to be able then to apply your internal audit framework and assessments to a topic that you'd perhaps not fully fledged understand. That can be a very big challenge because.
I think fair.
Yeah.
Maybe turning to Massimiliano, do you recognize this, and how do you overcome that challenge?
Yes, I fully recognize it. I think this is exactly the case where we can play as a professional advisory role. I mean, if you are not, because at the end of the day, I always said ESG is exactly the same as many other topics we manage in our profession, would be data privacy or any other legislation entered in the past year, meaning applying the model we know. So assessing the risk, understand what are the control in place, assessing the governance, simply applied to a different topic. So we need to exactly apply the model and the mission we always had, even if in certain departments are interpreted in a different way, but it's clear that our mandate is not changed. We are only including a new topic in our radar screen, meaning that as we have maybe we don't have the strong knowledge on sustainability yet as a department, but we have a strong knowledge in governance, risk management, and control, meaning on this, with his hat, we can sit with the function in more advisory role in setting the right governance in place, as I mentioned at the beginning of my let's say speech, when we have done activity on the governance, supporting the management, changing the governance of the organization regarding to ESG topic. Secondly, challenging also the HR department on the people. We have seated in certain position. We have done it. So, I'm not talking something that I read in the book. We have done it. We've moved people without no proper skills leading the sustainability department because we were not capable to manage the agenda. So, we need to start from that level. And then, again, an advisory role, again, try to support the board, the sustainability committee in cascading the message inside the organization. Of course, there is the CEO, but the CEO has many topics in the agenda, not only the ESG. As ESG is something that also for us is very important, also for them, of course, but also for us. I think we can support him, the CEO, meaning we are not reporting to the CEO, we reporting to the board, but we can support him dealing with the function, with the first line, and supporting in cascading the message why is so key the ESG if you don't have sustainability department in place, or if the sustainability department is not structured yet or mature yet in this kind of topic, making the link between the enterprise risk management part, so who is taking care of the risk. We call it HERM in our enterprise risk management team, taking care of the risk. How we make the link between the risk assessment by the company and the ESG risks? Are they disconnected? In certain cases, yes, because the ESG is doing this materiality analysis alone and totally separate from the risk management of the rest of the company. That was the case in the past. How we can support to make this link, that is the enterprise management model inside is incorporating even the ESG risk. That seems strange, but it's not always the case. Because sometimes if you have different departments, one reported to finance, maybe the other one reporting to another department, then they don't talk each other. So we can more support as advisory the function in preparing the right setting for managing more mature way the ESG agenda. That's my part, my suggestion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massimiliano, for that. That was really, really thoughtful. Look, it's just my task at the minute then to thank our panelists. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Massimiliano. Thank you, Henrik, for your, as I say, really thoughtful inserts. You're very challenging, thought-provoking, and I know a lot of us will go away from this session with a lot of things to take back to our own teams that are very practical, very useful. I mean, even just from sort of the thinking about supply chain, thinking about that relationship, I think, between the internal auditor, the external auditor, when it comes to the reporting and what stage people get involved and what level do they get involved in. I think that's a definitely one for more consideration and more chatting around that. But thank you both, all three of you. Sorry, very much.
Thanks very much, and gentlemen, also thanks for joining me on the couch.